Good evening and welcome to episode 15 of Red, Gold, and Bold, a Kansas City podcast. Coming at you again on a Tuesday night live. If you're catching us via the stream, if you're catching us via the podcast, thanks for joining us wherever you are and whenever you're catching us. Jeff Chadiha from the NFL Network and NFL.com. Eric Eager, Pro Football Focus, PFF.com. You can read his great work there. Reloaded. As we're coming at you, double dipping tonight with both our podcasts. Eric Eager has a fresh glass of wine. Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Hey, look, Soren, I used to have to drink copious amounts of wine to stand my family during Thanksgiving. And now that my family leaves without me for football season, I need copious amounts of wine just to stand myself. So, look, it's the one variable that stays constant.
I like it. At least the honesty is there. There's no doubt about it. Let's jump right in. Are the Chiefs the team to beat in the AFC after Saturday's 19-9? I mean, you want to talk about a beatdown, 19-9, Jeff. Certainly a tremendous defensive performance from the Chiefs. Still some of the same problems they've had on the offensive side, but with the defense playing the way it was, game never in doubt, ran out to a 16-3 lead, always by double digits the rest of the way. Cowboys never really threatened. Does that make the Chiefs the best team in the AFC now?
They're in the conversation. I'm not ready to go. I'm not going there until the offense is playing consistently better. So certainly a great performance by the defense. I thought what I liked the most about their play was just their toughness. I felt like this team has bought into the idea that every game is going to be a fight. It's going to be a cage match, and style points don't matter as much as just finding ways to get wins. I thought a play that embodied that mindset was when Mahomes threw the interception, and then Byron Pringle ran the guy down, and Mahomes launched his body at the player as well. You go back to that Denver game against Philadelphia a couple of weeks ago, and Teddy Bridgewater avoided a tackle in that situation the way he would avoid an oncoming bus on the freeway. And so they seem to be locked into the idea that every man's got to make a play here to make things happen. And if it's ugly, so be it, as long as it's a victory. So, but yeah, I think the Patriots and the Colts are the three hottest and the three most impressive teams in the AFC right now. But I don't think, I said this on the radio with Steven St. John, I think throwing around the label of who's the best team in the AFC is not really what I'm into anymore, at least not this year, because I don't think it means anything. I think all these teams, the three teams I just mentioned, were all well under 500, or at least under 500 a month ago, and now they're in first place. And every team that's leading a division right now could easily not be doing that by the end of the year. So they're certainly playing among the best, but to be the best, that's Eric's category.
Right.
The Pro Football Focus rankings.
Yeah, to be the best, you got to beat the best. Some people would have said that the Cowboys were the best team in the NFL, at least before they made.
I didn't say that. Yeah.
There were some, and not you necessarily, but there were some that thought maybe the Cowboys were the best team in the NFL. They were banged up. I had some people throwing some things at me on Twitter, like, "Hey, did you know other teams beat teams that have injuries?" Like, you just point out part of the game. No matter how many times I say you can only beat the team that's in front of you, and wow, they're even the Raider game, which was very impressive, 41-14. Maybe they were on empty. The Chiefs did have some plays that they got away with, but 4 wins in a row in the NFL is 4 wins in the row. And, the Bills lost 9-6 to the Jags, right? Just winning 4 games, even if it's 4 ugly, disgusting turd fights of games, is an accomplishment in the National Football League. But no matter how many times you say that, somehow, if you're not heralding, a fan base's team as the best that ever lived, then they're going to get upset and they're going to get frustrated. I heard some of that today because I was talking about some of the things the Chiefs still need to work on. There's still plenty that comes out of this game, Eric, that the Chiefs need to work on. Yet while that continues, they win again. And they do it against a team that should be more than, should be able to put a better showing out there than 9 points, even with the injuries they had, unless a defense is playing some pretty good football.
Yeah. I mean, I'm somebody, as you guys know, that respects the markets greatly. We have the Chiefs winning the Super Bowl 9% of the time, which is tied around Green Bay, Tennessee, Arizona. Tampa's the favorite, but it's kind of a bunch of teams jumbled at 9%. The market sees it a little bit different. The market is bullish on the Kansas City Chiefs. Circa Sports, which I think is the sharpest sports book there is in the United States, has the Chiefs at plus 325 as favorites to come out of the AFC right now. Despite the fact that, as you said on your radio show today, Soren, when I was on, if Chalk wins this week, the Chiefs are the 7th seed in the AFC coming out, right? So the Chiefs right now are tied with Tampa Bay at 13-2 at Circa Sports as the favorite to win the Super Bowl. Right now, they're the favorite to win the Super Bowl with Tampa. The whole season didn't matter, apparently, guys. But the thing that I'll say about it, the Chiefs relative to the two teams Jeff talked about, which I agree are two of the hottest teams in football. The Chiefs are winning football games, but they're not playing that well on one half of the ball, right? Like, their defense is playing fine. Since we did this podcast, I mean, I look like the biggest idiot in the world, but like in the preseason, I said I thought the Chiefs could have had a good defense. Like I said, I like their corner group. I like that they're deep there. I like the athleticism they had at linebacker, and I liked some of the pieces on the D line, right? Like I don't think, I said they could win because of their defense. And I think through 6 weeks, I looked like the biggest idiot in the world. Like they were the worst defense in the NFL. And I mean, that game Sunday, they won because of their defense, and their offense was sputtering. Now, if you want to spin this as what's the conclusion from this? I think this is what the betting markets are taking into it. The conclusion is the difference between the Chiefs grinding out games and being kind of on the borderline of being elite and being the Kansas City Chiefs that can win a Super Bowl for the second time in 3 years is the offense turning it on. And the offense turning it on is one variable, basically. It's the play of the quarterback. And we've seen that happen before. And so I think that that's what people who are maybe more, optimistic than the three of us are, that's what they're seeing in the Chiefs.
I think there is the pedigree, which you've talked about, the baking in the past years to it. But also, you said defense playing pretty good. Last 6 games, I think it's 87 yards per game on the ground. They were getting gashed, something we saw back in 2019 that then they shored up. They've done that. And Derrick Henry was in there in that mix. Now, they didn't, they threw all over him. That's probably not the best game to champion for them, but they've really gotten
by
better.
The way, in the Titans game, the Chiefs covered Tennessee's receivers really well, and Tannehill made some really awesome throws. That game, you go back and look, and it wasn't as big of an ass whooping on the defensive side of the ball as we make it out to be. The reason the Chiefs lost that game is their offense played like 13 plays in the first half.
Yeah,
I think their defense, even if you throw in that game, their defense has been great for 2 months.
Yeah, and they played 13 plays and they didn't play them well either at the time. So that could be added in there. But they also have gone from 32nd in points allowed through 5 games to now being 15. And when they were sitting at 32, there were a lot of people that said if they can just get to number 20 by the end of the year, there are still 6 games to go. And they've already brought this defense up to number 15. And the schedule, which, week to week ebbs and flows, but has kind of come down over the last couple of weeks as far as the caliber of opponents with what it's looking like. They've got another game against the Raiders, Broncos a couple of times, Chargers have played down, and they did finally get back on the right track against the Steelers. Steelers looking down right now. All of a sudden that schedule looks better, and I do think that, they're pressuring the quarterback. The young linebackers are playing, and they look a lot faster. Willie Gay had a big play. It looked like Cowboys had a big play, and here comes Willie Gay to blow it up for no gain. Juan Thornhill sniffed out a screen pass that I thought was going for a touchdown. It's at the 37-yard line, and there were 3 guys in front of Zeke Elliott, and Juan Thornhill is a blur and comes in, takes out the legs of Zeke Elliott. It's a 5-yard gain, and I thought he was inside the 20 for sure. And maybe had a chance to score because there was a convoy in front of him. It had worked perfectly at the point of attack at the line. Juan Thornhill blows it up. That's 3 lines, right? Charvarius Ward and L'Jarius Sneed each come up with interceptions on a highly paid quarterback, an MVP candidate, still good wideouts in Michael Gallup and CeeDee Lamb in the first half. And I think Cedric Wilson's a pretty good player. He had some drops, but I think he can be a pretty good wide receiver. I'll push back. The defense, at least for 5 games, has been very good.
But that's like you're just poking at my worldview, right? Which is that like the defense is never it's never going to be on either pole, right? Like it's just because it's always a player or two. It's always some dumb nonsense like playing Sorensen over Thornhill for no reason away from it. But I agree with you. And I wanted to bring something up because you were rattling through those names. And I've been critical of Brett Veach on this show. I've been critical of Brett Veach at times on your radio show. I don't think I've ever said he should be fired or that he's a bottom half of the league GM, but I've been critical of him. But you just rattle off some names that I think we have to do some revisionist history on Veach, right? Thornhill, second-round pick of the Brett Veach era. Willie Gay, second-round pick of the Brett Veach era. Nick Bolton, the second-round pick of the Brett Veach era. Rashad Fenton, sixth-round pick of the Brett Veach era. L'Jarius needs a fourth-round pick of the Brett Veach era. Was it the coaching staff that just needed to figure this thing out, right?
Yes.
And I had that was something where I sort of, people I talked to, that was the frustration in the room was we're picking these players and they're not playing them. Well, and the guys now that they're on the field, they make plays.
Jeff, my frustration, I know Veach, and when they're not playing well, everybody deserves criticism, and certainly the personnel man does, and he was getting it early on. But my problem, I think the man knows talent. I think the problem is he doesn't have enough draft picks. He does good things with the draft picks. His success rate, and you can rattle off whatever the failures are, and we can get to McCole Hardman only playing 12 snaps. And I know that's one that everybody loves to. I think I said it I don't know, was it on this podcast or was it on the radio? I can't remember where it was, but it's like every time something doesn't go well or there's a mistake or a player plays poorly, there are two things that get put out there again. It's like Derek Nottie missed a tackle and the Chiefs took McCole Hardman in front of DK Metcalf and Breland Speak sucks. No. Like those two things are like these, they get dragged back out no matter what it is. It's like I used to take calls before the Chiefs won a Super Bowl and they'd be like, hey, Andy Reid had kind of a bad day, and, they didn't run the ball enough, and I've been a season ticket holder for 35 years, and they haven't been to the playoffs in 50 years. Like, Andy Reid's only been here since 13. Like, that was like this thing, and now it's like and it happens to all GMs that it gets dragged out there. But you can't look at that defense and see good depth with a guy like Michael Dana. Derek Nottie, when he's healthy, is a good run-stuffing D-tackle. The decision to re-sign Chris Jones looks really good when he's blowing up the Dallas Cowboys. Signing Tyrann Mathieu when, a lot of other teams, kind of obviously the Texans didn't think he was there. Like the defensive personnel looks pretty good, at least over the last 5 games, does it not?
Yeah, it does. It does. I mean, you can't really argue against that. And I said on the radio this morning that I think they would have beaten the Cowboys with the Cowboys playing at full strength with the way they played in that game. Just because I think they played at a certain level. I said on the radio, I said, defense to me is technique and communication, and then everything else is just hustle and heart, and pride, and toughness, whatever cliche you want to throw in there. It's attitude. And so when you're playing with a lot of belief, and it's trust. If you trust the guy next to you is going to do his job, you got a better defense. If you don't suspect that, then you're going to have a lot of problems. And so right now you're seeing more trust, you're seeing more hustle, you're seeing players believing if they run hard and give effort, like you mentioned Thornhill, like you saw Rashad Fenton do against Deshaun Jackson last week, good thing happen. It's hard to say. It's a small sample size, right? We're talking about 4.5 games that, and this is not meant to be a slight, and I'm sure people are going to take it this way. Giants without pretty much every skill player imaginable and a mediocre quarterback. Packers without Jordan Love. Raiders without their best deep threat. And now the Cowboys without Tyron Smith, Amari Cooper, and CeeDee Lamb getting hurt at halftime. Like, you can't really discount that stuff. It doesn't mean the Chiefs aren't playing good defense, but it does mean that when they play teams at full strength, they're going to still have to answer those questions about what they have defensively. I mean, I think it's a lot easier to play defense when you know you can take away certain things. If you only have one receiver to worry about, it's a lot easier to cover people.
So is it a legit defense?
I think it's, even going back to 2019, I thought, is this a good defense that found its stride, or is it a mediocre defense that just played well for stretches? And I think that's what it's always going to be. It's always going to be the latter in my mind. It's going to be a mediocre defense that can have stretches when it plays at a high level like it's doing right now. But you're not going to count on this defense in the same way that the Ravens at full strength would count on their defense, or the Steelers at full strength would count on their defense. It's just not – this team is not built that way. This team is built – you mentioned the whole equation. If this team can just get to 20th in defense, they'll be okay. That whole equation is built on the offense playing at a supremely high level. If the offense isn't playing at that level, then this team is always going to be vulnerable to losing games in big moments.
They're what about 1 point away from being a top 10 scoring defense, like 1 point on average. So if they have a day where they hold them to 10 points, if they have a 16 and 16, points allowed, they're likely to be top 10 in points allowed. I mean, isn't that getting to be?
But again, if you're getting fat off Jordan Love and Daniel Jones,
but who's getting fat off the Bills and the Titans? What defense is other
Jacksonville? Jacksonville did.
Well, okay, fair. Yes, I mean, question asked, question answered. Well done. Touche. Yeah, but you know my point. I've likened this to baseball. You hit 55 home runs. You go back and look at it. It wasn't 41 of them against aces. Like, everyone wonders why the ball's not flying out of the ballpark in the playoffs, because the fourth and fifth starter and the middle relievers don't pitch. It's only the guys that can really kick ass. And likewise, it's why defenses don't usually pitch shutouts in the postseason, because you're done with the teams that you built up the really gaudy statistics against. Yeah. So, the Chiefs haven't shut out the Bills, and they haven't shut out the Titans, and they haven't shut out Brady, but that's not really what happens, right, in the NFL. If we're going to talk about where they are numerically, you got to compare them to what everybody else does, and everybody else gets some rummies as well.
All right, let's put it this way. I think what scares me about the Chiefs' defense, and again, they're playing well. I don't want to take anything away from how they're playing, is when they weren't playing well, they were so bad that I think it's hard to rectify that as just saying, oh, well, Frank Clark was out or was hurting and Juan Thornhill wasn't playing or Daniel Sorensen was in. I think they're capable of that. You can't discount that element of them as a defense. And if you want to go to the injury thing and say Charvarius Ward was hurt and these guys weren't playing, Cowboys came in here without their top two pass rushers and held this offense to 19 points.
True.
And you take away Chris Jones and Tyrann Mathieu from this defense and put them against a pretty good offense, I don't think they're holding that team to 19 points.
Yeah, I think this discussion, though, we have to be careful, right? Like, the Chiefs' defense is, I think we said this last week, right? In the year they won the Super Bowl, did we believe they went into the Super Bowl with a defense that was good enough for them to win without their offense playing a good game?
No.
And I think what the argument we're making is, like, this Chiefs defense can look like a pretty good team when everything is aided, and they can look like an elite team that you can win with when that's the case. Our bar for this team, if they're going to win, is that, right? Like, our bar for them is to be what Jeff described, which is an average defense that when they catch a run of good cards can press that edge, right? In the beginning of the season, what we were dealing with was a defense that couldn't get above the Mendoza line, right? And so, again, like, I think if the Chiefs are going to win the Super Bowl, like, the defense can kind of be plus or minus a standard deviation where they are now, right?
Right.
And if for the Chiefs to be a Super Bowl contender, I think the real discussion is their offense, right? Like, this defense, to me, they've already proven to me that they can get on the green, right? Whether they're not going to be the 0-2 Bucks and they're not going to be the 0-6 Colts before they got Bob Sanders back. There's something in between. And I think that we've always believed that if the offense is the ideal of what the offense should be, that level of defensive performance is acceptable.
But didn't we, Jeff, go into the Raiders game saying if they can handle the Raiders and the Cowboys, then it's time to buy in that they're real. They gave up 14 to the Raiders, and they gave up 9 to the Cowboys. Injuries, true. But like, do you think if they'd had all their pieces, the Cowboys were hanging 36 out there?
I don't think. No, I think that the way the Chiefs played in this game, they played a really good game. So I don't want to take away from that. I think the Cowboys, in a different, universe might win that. It might be a different outcome, but that's what I'm saying. I think the Chiefs played at a level emotionally, with the level of trust, level of belief that would have mitigated anything that was happening with the Cowboys. I think they just would have outplayed the Cowboys in this game. So I think that is true. But what I also think is, to me, that this team is becoming, and I'm not saying they can't win a championship. I want to make that clear. I think they're definitely in the conversation to win a championship based on what we've seen, because this league is wide open. But to me, they're the inverse of what Seattle is now. Whereas Seattle has got a good offense and a defense that goes up and down. Whereas when Seattle was built, they were at their best when their defense was really good and the offense could just be okay. Right? I think that's just where the Chiefs are at. The equation for winning a championship for them is always going to be about Mahomes first. And so I can get excited about the way the defense is playing, but I'm also always leaving the door open to the fact that the defense might let you down at some point. That there may come a point where, in this game, for example, those 2 turnovers that Mahomes had, if the Cowboys return those for touchdowns, it's a different game, right? And so the only thing that doesn't happen in those games is that Byron Pringle runs a guy down on an interception and Micah Parsons doesn't knock the ball far enough away that the guy who recovers it can't run and score a touchdown, and the defense holds. I just think that there's a lot to like about what the Chiefs are doing defensively, but I also recognize that who they're doing against is not like, they're not facing the greatest show on turf right now.
Yeah, but I'll bump back and say that if the ball, that gets knocked away by Frank Clark gets knocked out to the side, then it's a scoop and score for the Chiefs. And if either one of those,
if Tyron Smith is playing, is Frank Clark having that kind of game? That
no,
have an impact?
He's not having that kind of game. I would agree, but I also think you attack them differently too. I think the Chiefs, you may have seen more blitzes, and they didn't blitz in this game because they didn't have to. And I think, listen, they played the game that was out there in front of them, and they held the Cowboys to 9 points. So there's no apologies necessary there. And I think one of the important parts, so like I think we always get into this battle of, well, if this, right? And I think sometimes we don't put enough into, but this is what happened.
Yeah.
And this is what we got to build on. Right? Like to Eric's point last week when he said, and I heard this on the PFF Forecast, his podcast he does with George Cheruri. How'd you put it, Eric? We put too much into, we're too ready to dismiss
the bad losses,
a bad loss, and ready to hang our hat on. See that big win, that's who they are. I think there's an element in this conversation with us where it's always, we're not ready to just hang our hat on what happened. We dig down into the numbers. We watch it so closely that we lose sight of the forest through the trees. And the defense, when you stack up, I'll come back to and I'll get to something that I think is a potential game changer for the defense in a negative fashion. But I think when you stack up this many performances in a row against anyone in the NFL, there isn't Northwest Missouri State in the middle of that, right? They're all NFL teams, and that's real.
Well, again, I'm not trying to diminish what they're doing. I'm trying to keep it in perspective.
Okay.
And so keeping it in perspective to me is saying, and I think you're right, you make a great point. For me, it's all you can do is judge them off who they played against. And so I think they played great against Dallas. I think they played horribly against Tennessee and against Baltimore and against the Chargers and against the Bills. And so do I think they can still? I think the danger is to extrapolate on what Eric just said, or Eric's point about dismissing big losses and giving too much credit for big wins. I think it's way too dangerous to believe that because Buffalo loses to Jacksonville, for example, that's who Buffalo is now. That's who we always thought they were going to be, or to say who am I thinking? Or Dallas, what happened last week with Dallas? That's who they are now. I think teams are always evolving and growing, and you're seeing elements of what they can become. I think this league is always about matchups. I think it's always about who's across from you. And so I think it's always about realizing that some teams get breaks. In 2019, the Chiefs were not the top seed going into the last week of the season. And guess what? New England beat Miami, and guess what? They get to be the first seed. They're going to have 2 home games. Nothing to do with what they were doing. It just got a lucky break. Yeah. Sometimes you get lucky breaks, and you shouldn't apologize for those things because at the end of the day, all that matters is who wins. Chiefs got to go to play Tampa in the Super Bowl without both starting offensive tackles, including one that got hurt in the AFC title game. I guarantee you, no one in Tampa is saying, man, we got lucky not seeing Eric Fisher and Mitchell Schwartz saying, guess what? We got a ring out of it. This is good.
I really wish Barrett Robbins would have made it to the hotel.
Exactly. Yeah. So that's how I look at it. I think all this stuff, I think what we want to do is be able to say they won and then say, I was right about this. This is who they are now. When I think it doesn't really matter who they are as long as they keep winning.
Well, and I think that's to me, this is why I gravitate so much to sports betting, right? Because ultimately, and I say this, and I was talking to somebody within the league because there's like infighting in a lot of teams. And I said, the thing I like about sports betting is the only scoreboard is the scoreboard. Like, Soren talks about, and he says, you root for your takes, right? And I think sometimes, I think when you bet on games and you have to make sure, you have to make sure you're right for the being correct sake. You're willing to abandon dumb opinions you had that may still be true. You have to cut bait on bad things, right? So, like when it comes to Kansas City, like, if you thought that they were going to have a bad defense and then through 6 weeks they had a bad defense, you're like, hey, I'm right. And then you faded the Chiefs the last 3-4 weeks and you've been losing money. Like, it's because you kept buying into the fact that you're a genius, right? Like you kind of have to be able to be nimble here and adjust to how things are happening. And I think I still think the Kansas City Chiefs have a lot of things to improve on. And that's what I think they're so fascinating because unlike New England and unlike Indianapolis, the Chiefs are in a fantastic position despite some of their imperfections. And I think the New England's in the position they are because they've been basically perfect for about a month. And I think Indianapolis has played to their ideal for about a month. And, to me, I think they might have peaked too early. I don't think the Chiefs, if they have a peak this year, it's happened yet.
Yeah, I think they certainly haven't put together both sides of the ball, which I want to get to again in a minute. But I want to talk about Chris Jones here. We'll go a little bit out of order from the rundown we put together. But I want to talk about Chris Jones. And, Eric, I'll give you a chance to look up the snaps he played by position this week because I know you've got that on your magic computer there with the PFF database at your fingertips. Because, like, I will shove back a little bit. Jeff, you said – well, you can't just say they weren't playing well because, they didn't have this guy or they didn't have that guy. But, early on, and this is a fault of Steve Spagnuolo and his staff, right? And I do like your point. I do agree with your point, and it does scare me. If they could screw it up then, what's the guarantee that they won't screw it up ahead, right? Like you mentioned, okay, Thornhill in, Sorensen out. That's been big. But, and you're like, it's that one thing, but I think it's many things. I never think it's one thing. I always think it's many things. I think the Chiefs have actually had many things change on the defense. Thornhill in, Sorensen out. Getting Charvarius Ward back. He was hurt for a time. Getting Tyrann Mathieu back. He was out one game that they lost. And getting him playing better. I don't know if there was a residual effect, but he seems to have played better the last 3 games. Getting 2 young linebackers on the field. And Nick Bolton and Willie Gay. That's big. That's less snaps for Hitchens and Ben Neiman. Getting Chris Jones off a defensive end and back over to D tackle. Getting Frank Clark on the field and then getting Frank Clark healthy on the field and then adding Melvin Ingram. That's actually a lot. It's not just a thing. Well, they kind of back-assed into this thing. They have really overhauled a lot to where you could say, all right, there are a lot of things that have been changed. It's not just one thing, right?
Oh, it's not. It's not. The one thing that mattered the most was getting the pass rush figured out. So moving Chris Jones inside it was a huge difference maker. And that would maybe be one of those mysteries that go down with Jimmy Hoffa. And it's one of those things like how this happened, what happened here type situations, because we'll never know why he was playing so much at defensive end when it clearly was, he clearly had more impact at defensive tackle. But yeah, I think that, look, Melvin Ingram, I thought, was a flyer. It's worked out so far. Frank Clark has played at a higher level. Those younger guys you mentioned at linebacker have played better. I mean, I keep saying this, I don't want to diminish what they're doing because it's demonstrably better than where they were at a month ago. There's no question about it. I just know, being a connoisseur of defense as opposed to you guys being connoisseurs of offense, there's things that I see and things that I hear people talk about that, okay, they're doing this well, but what if this happens now? That's how I look at it. So, yeah, Charvarius Ward's back in the game. How many people have really challenged him outside of throwing deep? There's a reason for that, because the defenses they're running they're just saying, don't get beat deep. And so the ball's going that way. Now, when you start seeing people running double moves, when you start seeing people formation him in the one-on-one coverage, it could be a different story. I think the longer Nick Bolton plays, the longer Willie Gay plays, the longer Charvarius Ward is out there, the longer Thornhill is out there, teams will start game planning for them. It's much like, to use your baseball analogy, it's much like seeing a pitcher the first time around. But now teams have had a month to see what these guys do and figure it out, and you'll see teams attack them in different ways. And so that's what I look for, is not just, hey, these guys are playing great right now. It's what's going to happen when teams start to see what they don't do well, because they all have flaws and they all can be attacked in the same way Daniel Sorensen was attacked and Ben Neiman was attacked, and guys who weren't playing well before.
But if Andy Reid has yet to master the anecdote for the cover 2 defense, why does that mean other offensive coordinators will master the anecdote for what the Chiefs are doing defensively?
Because what they're doing is taking advantage of matchups. Like, Frank Clark hasn't seen David Bakhtiari or Tyron Smith in the last 2 weeks. And I said going into this game, they didn't see Aaron Rodgers, by the way, as well. I said going into this 3-game stretch, Packers, Raiders, and Cowboys, this would be the stretch that defined their season. And I thought at best they might get one win. I thought the Raiders were going to be the easiest game. That was proved to be the easiest game. I didn't see them beating the Cowboys or the Packers, but I also didn't see the Cowboys not showing up with 5 of their 7 best players, or Green Bay not showing up with Aaron Rodgers. And so I think that helps their cause, but it doesn't mean that all of a sudden, hey, just because I can dunk on an 8-foot rim doesn't mean I'm like the world's greatest dunker. All of a sudden, at some point, the rim goes 10 feet, and it might change a lot of what I can do. That's how I look at it.
I think Jeff makes a great point. I think defense, he's making the point that I've been making for a long time, which is the defense is oftentimes a product of the offenses you face, right? And that's why it's difficult to buy into a defense. But I think it's all defenses, right? I think the reason why the Washington football team was everybody's darling last year was because they looked really good against the Nick Mullenses of the world last year, and the train wreck that was the NFC East quarterbacks, right? And then this year, when they get a dose of Tom Brady and Patrick Mahomes and Jalen Hurts and guys like that, it's not as easy for them, right? So, I think but there are some fundamental things, right? Chris Jones played 4 of his 50 snaps the other day at edge, right? He had relatively few run defense snaps. But as you're Michael Dana, Alex Okafor, who were playing 40, 50 snaps a guy at the beginning of the season, combined for 30 snaps against the Cowboys, right? So they're getting better players on the field, right? Frank Clark is a better player than those 2 guys, and he's playing up to his capabilities. And then you're getting solid performances out of Derek Nottie. You're getting better performances out of Jerron Reed. But here's the money stat that I want you guys. Since Juan Thornhill has joined the lineup, the Chiefs have the 7th fewest missed tackles in football. And they played, and
is that because
they
of
played
him?
all the games, right? So when you look at, I got to go missed tackles per game here, but the teams that have fewer missed tackles, Baltimore, Green Bay, Washington had a bye, Minnesota had a bye, New York Jets had a bye, Niners had a bye. And so, New Orleans, I believe, also had a bye. So the Chiefs had the 7th fewest and have played the maximum number of games during that time.
And so where were they at before he started playing?
So if you look at weeks 1 through 5, so those are the Sorensen years were 1 through 5 Sorensen weeks. The Chiefs had the 15th most. Okay. So they were middle of the pack. Like Sorensen was the one offender, and Sorensen's missed tackles were like, going for 50-yard touchdowns and stuff like that. But like they've improved in that way, in the way of, and so to Jeff's point about what they try to do defensively, this is where I disagree, because the Chiefs are a team that'll give up stuff to tight ends, and they'll give up stuff to middle of the field guys, and they ask their corners to make tackles. They don't ask their corners, to your point, to be brilliant, man coverage players. And if you can tackle, that's a sound way to play defense. If you can't tackle, and they could not tackle in the early part of the year, they also couldn't get a pass rush, so I'm not negating that. But if you can't make a tackle when you rush 7 and he throws on his first read and that guy's 5 yards short of the first down, if you can't make the tackle, then that blows up the entire scheme of the defense.
Yeah.
I will say it's not just Thornhill; it's also Bolton and Gay getting in there that are helping that out. And not only do they tackle, they don't take a 4-yard ride.
Yeah.
Okay. All three of those guys arrive with authority. We talked about this. Why, before Nick Bolton could get on the field, that I said, listen, the reason I want to see Nick Bolton is because in the little bit we got to see him in the preseason and the little bit we get to see him now, the man arrives with a thump. And talk about being physical. We mentioned this. The Chiefs talked a couple of years ago. We want to be physical. When they were drafting Breeland Speaks, that was their big word, physical. Tough. Tough was actually their big word. Tough. We're going to be a tough defense. Tough defense, no. And frankly, I don't care about that, because I really don't think the Patriots are necessarily a tough defense, right? The way the Ravens and Steelers.
It's pretty tough. They got some big guys in there.
They don't blow people up like the Steeler-Ravens games used to be. It looked like you mentioned Rocky on the 2D podcast, right? That's what it looked like. Was a Creed and Rocky trading blows out in the middle of the field. But I think with the Chiefs, they have those guys are tough. They are physical, and they punish you, and they beat you up. And when they get to you, they take you down there, and you don't get an extra yard or two. And I think that has made a difference for this team. The other thing that I think makes a difference for this team, 2 things. One is the fact that their secondary, when they have all their pieces, when they have Fenton, Ward, Snead, and then Thornhill and Tyrann Mathieu, they can disguise a lot, because every one of those guys can at least play serviceable man defense, right? Like, you see it. It's pretty obvious. Some of the stuff looks obvious anyway. When the one safety's up and they roll him over and he comes up when the man goes in motion, they're pretty much saying, do what you want. We're going to play it the way we're going to play it, because they have no weak link. To Eric Eager's point that he's always made about defense is about avoiding having a weakness, and they don't have that weakness. And so when you could say, okay, Rashad Fenton can cover your wide receiver. No, we don't want him covering for 5 seconds, but we're confident we can get a pass rush. Then you can, if it's Fenton coming or is Fenton blitzing, and Tyrann Mathieu's got to get him for 3 seconds. I think a lot of those help. Now, injuries could defang that very quickly, to your point that you made before, Jeff. But I think that is real.
Yeah, I think I think we're making the same point. I'm not as high on their secondary and their corners outside of Mathieu as you are, or maybe Eric. I think that they're just ordinary. I think they could be taken advantage of. But I feel like look at the quarterbacks have given them problems traditionally, and including this year. Lamar Jackson, Justin Herbert, Jalen Hurts is in that category. They lost. They beat that team.
With the different personnel.
What's that?
With the different personnel for the Chiefs. Like, let's see round 2 against the Chargers.
No, I'm just saying traditionally that the way they play defense is they want you in 2nd and long, 3rd and long, so they can blitz, and those corners don't have to do too much. But if you're able to keep them off balance, either with your run game or with the quarterback can move around, like Josh Allen's in that category, they become a lot more vulnerable. And so those are the teams that will always give them fits, or Tom Brady, who can just see what they're doing, or an Aaron Rodgers, which is why it'd have been a good challenge to see how he fared against them, because those guys can see so much and have seen and understand so much of what they're trying to do, that they're not doing anything that's like groundbreaking. Right? That's why when they do get beat, they give up huge plays because huge plays are there to be had. It's a question of whether you can see it fast enough or create enough time to get it going.
Well, let's go to this. You asked the question when we were talking and we were getting ready for the podcast here. How much focus should we put on the offense that only had 19 points and had 2 turnovers against the Cowboy defense that didn't have its top 2 pass rushers? And I think we should put quite a bit. And I know I sound like I'm beating the drum that this Chiefs defense is going to be top 5 and there's no problems. I will tell you the one thing that I think is absolutely critical for why they've had success: playing from in front. Like if the Chiefs had scored 16 points. Did they get them all? Did they get 16 in the first quarter, or was it early in the second when they got to 16-3? They didn't score but 19 points. True, but they got them early, and I think that's giant because had they scored 3 and they were chasing 9-3, I think it could have been different. I think Dallas is more likely to stay with the run. They're more likely to pound away. And I think the fact that the Chiefs, while they didn't score a lot of points, they scored them early. To Jeff, to your point, it allowed the defense to play the way it wants to play. And that's what the lead. And even though they weren't getting a lot of points because the Cowboys could never really close, they could still play aggressively. And if a double move was going to beat them over the top, they didn't have to panic. I mean, let's be honest. They almost got beat on the first play from scrimmage. Michael Gallup was wide open and Dak Prescott missed him. No. And maybe it's a different game if it's 7-0 Cowboys. Maybe not. But I do think it is important that they play from in front.
Well, and I think they've also recognized who they're playing against. That goes back to who's playing offense, who's under center, who's not on the offensive line or at receiver. And when you have those advantages going in, it's going to put a lot less pressure on your offense, just naturally, because you don't have to go out there and put up 30 to win the game. Now, I think it's important to know that there will come a day when they will see those kind of offenses again. It may not be in December, but it sure enough will be in January. And for all these teams who are struggling now that we're talking about, the bulk of them will find a way to get right. I think the ones who are good will rise to the top, and you'll see there's enough good quarterbacks and enough good weapons out there. Teams will get healthier. It'll be a different story. But yeah, I think for me, offensively, I'm not trying to be a grump here about this stuff, but Mahomes has had one good game in the last 5 now.
Yeah, my colleague Timo Risky said in Mahomes' first 3 years in the NFL, he had I think 2 games with an expected points added in the 35th percentile or worse. In the last 5 games, he's had 4 such games.
Yeah.
So, he is not playing well. This is and I know Mike Frazier, who's basically the football research analyst for the Chiefs. This is he did something for the front office and said this is the longest a quarterback has ever gone in an NFL career without a bad streak.
Yeah.
So Mahomes,
Andy Reid quoted that at a press conference saying, "No one's ever gone this long without a slump."
Yeah, and so we're seeing the slump. And to Jeff's point about the other teams in the AFC and the NFL, their offense is eventually reviving. I think you could say the same about the Chiefs. In fact, given what we know about the Chiefs, it's probably the more likely that they'll emerge as an elite team. There are some worrying things, though. Against the Raiders, the Chiefs ran 22 plays under center. Against the Dallas Cowboys, they ran 12. They ran 12. They ran, I think it was 10 or 12 RPOs against the Raiders. They ran 24 against Dallas. It's what we talked about on the show for a long time. They need to kind of get to the roots of, I think, a traditional offense. Be under center, put the fullback in the game, run the football in traditional fashion, be aggressive, be physical, and don't worry so much about these gimmicky RPO things. They don't work. They just don't work. And they reverted back to their normal offense against Dallas. And funny, it didn't work.
But do you think Mahomes is comfortable playing under center for that long a period of time? I don't think he is, which is why they don't do it.
Yeah, but is he comfortable in their normal offense right now?
Well, that's the conundrum. I mean,
go ahead.
No, that's all I was going to say. That's the conundrum.
Yeah, no, I think it is, and I think there's a lot there. I want to just one thing. I want to put a finishing bow on the Chris Jones thing. one of the things they said was, Chris Jones said, I think in the post game, playing some snaps at defensive end means that the offense can't game plan for where I'm going to be. And they can't just say, hey, we're going to double him because he's going to be right here at D tackle. Is that true? Or did the 4 snaps out there and the success he had say, no, D tackle and D tackle only?
Well, this is a great football topic, right? Because we talk about weak links, we talk about strong links. The defensive line is the one place where a defense can have a strong link system, right? Because in the secondary, you don't get to choose where the offense throws the ball. You are the attacked. On the defensive line, you are the attacker, right? You can line John Randall up against a tackle or a guard. J.J. Watt went from inside to outside. Reggie White, if you watch old Packers and Eagles games, he played 3-tech just as much as he played 5-tech, right? And that's the one place where the defense can reclaim some versatility and some attacking, right? You can find the weak link of an offense and put your best defensive lineman over him and have him rush the weak link, right? So in that regard, he's right. The problem is when he was playing edge in base downs, he became the attacked for some of these read option teams and some of that stuff. So I have no problem with Chris Jones playing edge, and I think he did it mostly on passing downs against the Dallas Cowboys. I have no problem putting him out there when he has no responsibility against the run, right? Like if you're just lining him up and saying, oh, look at this is bad left tackle. Let's say the left tackle for Dallas the other day was dealing with the speed rush of Frank Clark the whole game. And then on a third down, Chris Jones hits him with the bull rush, right? That's probably a nightmare if you're a left tackle, you're a backup left tackle in the league. So I don't disagree with him.
Yeah, I mean, it's look, he's better inside. Let's just cut to the chase. He's better inside. The whole thing about to know he's better inside, look how he handled that football when he got it into his hands and was running with it after he covered that fumble. Did he look like a guy who was athletic enough to be a dominant player week in and week out as a defensive end? Or he looked like a big guy who just needs to be playing inside out? He looked like a big guy who should just be putting his hand down and taking advantage of less athletic people in front of him. When he's playing inside, he has a totally different impact, not just on the game, but on the confidence in the people around him. He does not have that same impact playing defensive end.
Yeah, I would agree. I don't see where, because you can still move him around. If you every now and then you have a specialty piece, which is what they did against Dallas, and you want to throw him out there just to show you, I'll throw the change up. Here it is. Here's a different look, and stunt with him, do something fine. But I think the man is a defensive tackle, and he was one of the top 3 defensive tackles in football, playing only defensive tackle. And so I think Chris Jones still wants to play DN. So that comment at the end of the game was Chris Jones still lobbying to play DN.
Yeah. He's a big guy who wants to shoot threes, Soren.
Yes.
That's what he is.
Stop calling
perfect analogy.
Well, somebody needs to turn into, who is it? Who was on TNT once and told Chris Webber to get his ass under the basket?
Yeah.
Somebody needs to tell Chris Jones to get his ass on the 3-tech.
Clyde Edwards-Helaire made his return for the Chiefs. 12 carries, 63 yards, and a touchdown. Caught a couple of passes for 13. I'll point out that he had one call back for 13, 14, 15 yards, something like that. That I thought was a play that looked pretty good. So it could have been a third one. Do we like what we saw out of Clyde Edwards-Helaire and what he's going to bring to this offense? Jeff?
I saw what I've seen in past weeks, which is just, a couple of good runs here or there. Not a whole bunch of shake. I just don't think I like the guy. I think he's a competent player. I think he's got value to a certain extent. I just don't think he's that much of a difference maker. And so I'm trying to be complimentary here. I don't want to just I don't want to just bury the kid. But Darrell Williams does the same stuff. And so for me, it's, this is an Eric strike zone here, but an undrafted guy looks just as good as the guy who's the first round pick. I just don't see the big difference in what they're bringing to the table right now.
I think Clyde's a better runner than Darrell, but I think Darrell's a better James White than Clyde is. Like, I mean, you already saw, when the play broke down and Pat threw Clyde the ball and he didn't know he was out of bounds. Right? Like, I think that I think Clyde's really good at running between the tackles. I think he's good on screens. I think he's got a ways to go to be that breakdown player that Damian Williams is so good at, that Darrell Williams is good at. And so I think that hopefully they'll get into sort of what the 2018 Pats did, which was Sony Michel's playing on early downs. We're going to run them. And when it's a pass down, which is basically second and third down, we're going with James White.
Yeah. I guess I'll just say I'd like to see Clyde Edwards-Helaire have a game where he catches 6 balls for 101 yards. I mean, James White. I mean, Darrell Williams had 20 catches.
Yeah, nine for 101 against the Raiders, and
9 for 101. Yeah,
six of them or 7 of them were after the first read.
Eric said it today in the program when he was on the radio show that Clyde Edwards-Helaire kind of showed his inability to handle the freelance stuff when he caught the ball out of bounds, right? And immediately stepped out of bounds. He just didn't have a feel for where he was over on the sideline. He's got to get better at that, at the freelance stuff, because like even Tom Brady, when he takes a few steps, I'm not going to say scrambles, but takes a few steps, James White always knew where to get to give him somebody to get the ball to. And, whether that's coaching from Andy Reid and Greg Lewis and, Eric Bieniemy trying to get him up to speed. I agree. I think he's got a lot more wiggle than you give him credit for, because I think he's got one vicious, stick the leg in the ground cut. And I've watched it in training camp too many times where, again, it's a drill, but the drill gets you into the open field, and he would fake guys out of their shoes. And I think there's more wiggle there than you give him credit for. Let me ask you this. Who was the best running back that Andy Reid had at the Eagles?
Brian,
LaShawn McCoy.
Okay,
you're going to say Brian Westbrook, but
Brian Westbrook was the comp that I had heard before, but I'm going to
2 times. That's Chief Legend, by the way, Shady McCoy.
Yes. Okay, in his days with the Eagles, how many yards per carry did LaShawn McCoy average?
How many yards per carry? Probably 5.2, 5.3.
4.6. Brian Westbrook in his years with the Eagles, how many yards per carry did he average?
Probably 5. I'll go with 5.
4.6.
Oh.
In his years with the Kansas City Chiefs, how many yards per carry has Clyde Edwards-Helaire averaged?
Clyde's in that 4.5 to 4. He's in the 4.5 to 5 range.
4.5. This year he's averaging 4.8. I mean, is it just maybe we don't have the memories of the playoff games with Clyde Edwards-Helaire having a day? That's the difference. I mean, he's got some big games under his career. I mean, how many times did Brian Westbrook or LaShawn McCoy go for 100 yards? I mean, LaShawn McCoy, for the Eagles, 637, 1080, 1309.
Soren, I got to stop you right there, though. Because we got to see Clyde go for 73 for 703 and 6 touchdowns through the air, 61 for 616 and 4 through the air.
I agree.
77 for 699 and 4 in the air.
That's what he's here for.
90 for 771 and 5 through the air. Like I agree. I remember I went to a Vikings Eagles game in the playoffs growing up in Minnesota, and Westbrook caught a screen for 70 yards to basically end the game.
Okay, but let me say this. All right, LaShawn McCoy's first year catching the ball, 40 for 308. All right, then he did take off, 78 for 592, 48 for 315, 54, 52. He took off, right? I will grant you that. Brian Westbrook, in his first year, 9 catches, 86 yards. Second year, 37 for 332. Then he took off, 73, 61, 77, 90. Clyde Edwards-Helaire. First year with the Chiefs, 36 for 297. He's not that far behind the pace that those guys were setting. Now this year, 10 catches for 74 yards. He's only played 6 games.
He's been hurt. See, I just wonder about the trust aspect, especially down the field, because that ball that Mahomes threw to Darrell Williams in that Raiders game, Williams made a great catch, but you throw that ball to a running back down the field, you better have a lot of faith in him to make that play. And go back to the Super Bowl. He did the same thing in that game. Ball going to Darrell Williams down the field. So I don't know what Darrell Williams is doing or what he's showing in practice. But he ain't throwing those kind of balls to Clyde Edwards-Helaire. He ain't looking for him in those situations.
But is that a problem? I mean, like, yes, if the goal is to validate the draft pick, yes, it's a problem. But is that a problem if he throws those balls to Darrell Williams and he throws screens and checkdowns to Clyde Edwards-Helaire? Like, listen, I don't think. Let me finish this. I don't think he's going to be LaShawn McCoy. He's not as tall as LaShawn McCoy. To Jeff's point, he always calls him small, and he's right. He's not going to play out there. He's not even as big as 5'10" Marshall Faulk, where you're going to slide him out there and have him run routes as a wideout. And the Cowboys showed it. They had a play where they sent Clyde Edwards-Helaire to the top of the formation, all the way at the sideline, and Van Der Esch went out and covered him. You're not doing that against Marshall Faulk or LaShawn McCoy in their prime. So I grant you, no. I think that ship has sailed. I think he is more of a power runner than those guys were. He doesn't have the arm length, the hand size to be out there running, 17-yard slants. And those guys could do those things. But that doesn't mean that he can't still be an effective weapon in the passing game by, handling the short stuff.
Can we also talk about the run game too with him? Like, I think he's running well this year. I think he'd run even better if they ran the ball without RPOs.
Yes.
I think if they had when the offensive lineman getting off the ball, getting downfield, getting blocks at the second level, like what the Chiefs have not had this entire season. I got to actually look and see what what's the Chiefs' longest run from scrimmage that's not like on some like wide receiver BS, right? Like to a running back, what's the longest run this year?
Terrence Gore might have it.
Let's look at
what's the guy's name? What's the guy's name?
The Chiefs' longest runs this year. So here we go. 33 yards by Tyreek Hill, 24 yards by Mecole Hardman, 23 yards by Patrick Mahomes. We have a 21-yarder by Darrell Williams. We have an 18-yarder by McKinnon. The longest run this year by Clyde Edwards-Helaire is 17 yards.
Wow.
Again, like this is the thing, right? Like he's here to bust a 60-yarder at some point, isn't he? And I think I'm going to give him credit. He's doing well considering what they're blocking up for him. And I think it's hamstrung by the offense they run, right? If they can get linemen downfield to the second level and chip off a linebacker or two, and he can get like a 60-yard run, I think we're talking about this offense a little bit differently. But like they don't have explosive plays in the run game.
Yeah.
And like that was always LaShawn McCoy. Like Shady McCoy's caught 78 balls in year two as the running back for the Eagles. And, but he busted a few long ones. Obviously, Westbrook had the big ones, but he also had the catches and stuff. Like, I agree that maybe it's a little bit too much to ask for him in the passing game because Pat just does not trust him. But he at least, like, what we need from him, if you're a Chiefs fan, is he needs to pick up a 30-yard run. He needs to pick up a 40-yard run, a 70-yard run. We can't constantly be, like, talking about only these runs coming from guys like Hardman and Hill.
I think it's fair. I mean, I think you'd like the home run, but I don't think it's necessary for the Chiefs to be successful.
No, I don't. I think that's a fair point. I don't think anybody's making that point here. I just think it's a matter of, does he make this offense better? And I think he's just. I think whoever's playing that position right now, whether it's him or Darrell Williams or Derek Gore, is giving you the same thing. So until he gives more than that. I mean, Eric, talking about Darrell Williams. I mean, what's the guy? Derek. What's the guy who won the Super Bowl MVP? The other Williams. Okay, I'm getting my Williams is confused. It was 26. Damian Williams. I mean, he had a 90-yard run in that Vikings game. Whatever, back 2019. That was a huge play.
Yeah, he made Anthony Harris fall down. That was one of the better runs.
Yeah, he needs one of those kinds of plays to open some eyes.
Yeah, and I will grant you that that is, those plays need to come. I will say that I think they're going to come. Like, I think they will be there. And I do think that there is a much bigger opportunity for him to make plays in the passing game than what we've seen to this point. And does he need to be coached up? He does. But then what the hell is Eric Bieniemy and Greg Lewis earning a check for?
Yeah. But see, here's the problem, Soren. When you don't have Tyreek Hill going deep, Mecole Hardman isn't the player you thought he was. you got to do more stuff to get those guys the football. So it's just like he's suffering. Some of his issue is just a lot of traffic in front of him as far as game planning goes.
By the way, for what it's worth, last year, 31, 27, 27. 3 longest runs last year. So nope, 60, but not 17. 31, 27, 27, 18, 17, 17. 5 runs. 17.
But, like, again, this whole thing.
We're talking to Les Miles right now, or who was the Ed Ogeron?
Yeah. The Chiefs have a lot of meat left on the bone on offense, and I think that some of it. So, like, think about where we've come, right? As a show, as a team, the team we followed 6 weeks ago. All of us were like, "Where's the cavalry for this defense? Where, like, who's walking through, like." Dale Carter's not walking through that door. Derek Thomas isn't walking through that door. All this kind of stuff. And it was a few tweaks, right? It was a couple guys getting right, and the A plus B was more than A plus B, right? There was a knockoff effect. There are a number of things about this offense that are maddening, in my opinion. The rate at which they run RPOs, the number 2 receiver position, the fact that Byron Pringle is clearly the best guy there and they're not using him nearly as much, all this kind of stuff. They get the bye this week. They still are elite at wide receiver and tight end and number 1 in those both positions. And the solution, in my opinion, is right there in front of them. Like, can they do it? They did it on defense. So maybe the impetus is for them to be able to do it on offense too.
Yeah. We'll see. Is it 19 all over again? Are you ready to go there, Jeff?
No. 19 was a whole different flavor. I think one thing about 19 that they saw a lot of feeble offenses down the stretch. They saw a lot of teams that were had waved the white flag, so to speak. You're not going to see that this year. This is a very unique year for a lot of teams, and that, if you're not, like I said before, all these teams in every division is in a position where they have to fight through week 17 to secure their playoff spot. And so, I'm trying to think. They played the Raiders in 2019, the Chargers. They played the Bears. They played the Raiders again late. They had some teams that were just lousy at the end. I think there's enough teams at the end of this schedule now. I think every team they're going to see is either 5-5 or 6-5, or is anybody at 5-6? Anybody under 500 right now? I don't think there's anybody under 500. Who's that? 5. Nobody under 500.
Denver might be 5-6 by next week if they lose at home to LAC.
Yeah,
I mean,
all within fighting distance. That's what I'm. The point
I mean, you're right. Like the interesting thing about 19, Jeff, was all the stuff we were talking about the defense now over the last month. We were talking about Soren was the one who was the positive when we were at the Super Bowl and all that. But part of my pushback was, yeah, sure, their defense has been great over the last 2 months of the year, but they got a nice draw in the playoffs with Houston and Tennessee, and prior to that it was 2 Denver games, and and it was an Oakland game, and blah blah blah. And ultimately, the form that they showed at the end of that year, even against bad offenses, was Super Bowl caliber, let's just say. And but you're right. I mean, the question becomes, can they carry over what they had? Now, I think we're not that far away from from some combination of Pittsburgh, San Diego, Denver, and Cincinnati, some combination, if not all of them, not being all that great at teams by the time it's all said and done.
Yeah.
Like the Steelers. Let's look at the Steelers. The Steelers had a 2-point win against the Bears. They're firing their coach this week. They tied Detroit, and they had a loss to a Chargers team who was literally trying to hand them the game on a platter on Sunday Night Football. They're bad, And the Bengals are the Bengals, man.
I think it is absolutely 100% feeling like 2019. Now, that does not mean that the end result will be a championship, because I think Josh Allen's more experienced. The Bills should wake up and make some changes at some point. I think the Bills should be a tougher out when you get there against them. The Baltimore Ravens have been around the block again, so they should be a tougher out. They never have faced them in the playoffs. I think Justin Herbert presents a better quarterback challenge if it is a shootout, or if your offense just isn't scoring, you're not holding him scoreless. I think it's going to be a harder road. I think they will have accomplished something greater if they get there this year. But there's no doubt. I think it's okay to say defense sucked. It's getting better. They're getting on a roll. They're winning games. The elements that isn't there is the offense playing at a high level.
That's kind of a big element.
Well, it is a big element.
There were no questions about Mahomes in 2019, except for
I got
questions about him in 19.
What?
Sure, there
down
were
the stretch
about him. Can he win the big game? And
I mean, he was playing well. I'm saying he was playing well, though. He was still playing well. He wasn't playing like he is right now.
Yes.
19 was Mahomes' worst year other than 21.
Yes.
Still good. But in 18, Mahomes had 51 big-time throws. In 2020, he had 50 big-time throws. In 19, he had 36.
How many this year?
That's how.
Yeah,
he still led the league, probably.
Like, he has 15 this year, so he'll have probably about 30 by the time it's all said and done. But if you look at 2019, he did grade really well down the stretch. But you look at his passing grades. Look at his passing grades. Week 11 against the Chargers, that was the win to get them to 7-4. That was after the Tennessee loss. 59.9 PFF passing grade. His grade against the Raiders, that blowout win after the bye, 66.7. 6 yards. I'll do yards per attempt because I don't. PFF grades are sort of on a scale where we're not all good with that. Chargers, 5.7 yards per pass attempt, not good. Raiders, 6.0 yards per pass attempt. New England, the game they won at Foxborough, 7.1 yards per pass attempt. Those are 3 games of under below average yards per attempt. Denver was 10. The snow game was 10 yards a pass attempt. Then Chicago 7.6 on Sunday Night Football. Then 7.0 against the Chargers in that Week 17 game where McCole Hardman's touchdown on the return was it. So Patrick Mahomes in the last 5 games, right? So they ended that season on a 6-game win streak, right?
Yeah.
He was basically below average in yards per attempt in every one of those games except for one.
So here's my memory of that. I thought they were playing more conservatively down the stretch as opposed to him just trying to play well and not playing poorly or playing below average.
But like he was not the 18 Mahomes, right? Sorry, he was a.
But was he trying to be that though? That's what I'm saying.
But like you could even make that case the other day. Like how many deep shots did Mahomes take on Sunday?
Well, that's what I'm saying. I think that does the defense play better when they're playing more conservatively? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's a good point. But I would say like the history of 19 is really weird, right? He turned it on and became God mode in the playoffs, not at the end of the 19.
When he needed to be. Like, why isn't the answer to that the defense didn't play better because he was playing more conservatively? Why isn't it the defense played better so he could play more conservatively?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I've had the conversation with them. I'm sure you've had something similar, Jeff, one-on-one, where it's like, hey, listen, he is one of the quarterbacks that completely understands down, distance, and time in the game. And when it's time to take a shot, he'll take a shot. And when it's time to put the ball in harm's way, because it doesn't matter. What the hell does it matter if you throw a pick at the end of the game against the Rams, down 54-51? He's going to hold the ball, and if it means he gets hit, but he knows what he's got to do to try to make it happen. I mean, people are, well, he got picked off. Well, he had to wait for the guy to get down the field to throw the ball, and he got hit, and the ball went up straight in the air, and Marcus Peters got a pick. But that's what his team needed to do to win there. I think he's off. I'm not trying to tell you he's locked in and he's making all the right decisions now. You'll get no argument from me. But I do think I don't think you can keep going back and saying, that always something bailed him out or something bailed out the defense. At some point they were doing things right and in a complementary fashion to win football games all the way to winning a championship. There's no doubt they got a little bit of a yellow brick road in the sense that they went through the Texans, although Deshaun Watson, till his problems, was the second best quarterback in the league, according to many, because Aaron Rodgers had gone into hibernation for 2 years. Then they ran into a Titans team that, how they were going to stop Derrick Henry. And then Kyle Shanahan's God's gift of play calling. After the fact, it's like, it was all easy. But there was a lot of doubt in those games from a number of
1-point favorites in the Super Bowl. It wasn't, it was like, I mean,
weren't they the favorites to win Super Bowl that year?
But in the game, they were 1-point favorites.
Okay.
1-point favorite.
Yeah.
So
I mean,
that's still a favorite, right? I can do math. That's still a favorite, right? That means they still think you're going to win as opposed to the other team, right?
Oh, what a jackass. What a jackass.
Yeah.
I think the point is none of us are saying, like, if you gave me the field even money against the Chiefs, I wouldn't bet it because I'm not going to bet against the Chiefs. But I believe that them being the co-favorite is not egregious. No. And I think it does feel like me and my colleague at work, who's also a Chiefs fan, David Solfaro, great guy. We've been joking. So he came over for the Giants game. This was when we were 3-4, and he said, feels like 19 around here. And we've been joking about it. And then all of a sudden they started winning these games. And now it actually does feel like similar to that year. I remember going on Petro's show the day after Mahomes' kneecap was like, on the back of his knee, and things were bleak. And again, things were bleak this year for different reasons. But, what I do like about this team relative to the 18 team and relative to the 20 team is I don't think that this team walks out of the locker room thinking they're invincible. Right. I think looking at your mortality in the face 4 times already this year, and in some cases drastically, like getting blown out by Tennessee and Buffalo, I think that gives a team enough of an edge, to where they're going to be scary.
See, I'm a little bit more superstitious about this stuff. And I feel like just the way the league has gone with just star players going down or being banged up, this team has managed to avoid that for a large part. They haven't lost a star player for a significant amount of time. That I do wonder, can they remain that lucky?
That's fair.
The rest of the course of the year.
That's true about every team, but that's right. I mean, if you're going to pick a specific team to win the Super Bowl, that's just as true about every of them. Yeah, all of them.
Mahomes has missed his games, but Travis Kelce, Tyreek Hill, they have not. But Chris Jones has. Tyrann Mathieu missed a game earlier this year.
Yeah, I'm talking about like the Marcus Peters, Derrick Henry level type things happening to you. Robert Woods, that kind of stuff. Kyler Murray being out for 3 games.
For this team, it's Patrick Mahomes, it's Tyreek Hill, it's Travis Kelce, it's Chris Jones, and Tyrann Mathieu, right?
Oh, you're talking about, that's what I'm saying. You're saying
you can't say the corners are ordinary and then say
no. I meant that's just they've been hurt already. I didn't understand what you were saying.
No, but I agree with you. The standpoint that they haven't lost what seems to be one of their key guys. But I also think that maybe part of their secret is that there's only like 5 guys. As top heavy as they are, Frank Clark, but can they survive Frank Clark? I don't know, maybe not the way he's playing now, but he's playing a lot better now. So.
I mean, Eric Fisher, I keep saying Eric Fisher happened in the AFC title game.
Yeah, no doubt. And that was crippling. And I think that may have been the difference in it. Think about this. If Frank Clark plays well the rest of the year, they still have to cut him. I don't think there's any doubt that they've structured their salary cap, plan to cut him. You may have a guy who played 2 good half seasons of football and goes down as one of the iconic players.
It just reminds me of when Musa Muhammad led the NFL and receiving yards and touchdowns for the Panthers, but his contract was so bad that the Panthers had to cut him.
Yeah. I mean, I think that may happen. He may be one of the most, greatest playoff. He's got the single game and I think the playoff sack record in Chiefs history already, doesn't he? I know he's got the single game playoff record for sacks with 3. And I think
sacks have only been a statistic since 82. So it would have to have been 91, 93, 95, and they've only played 1 playoff.
Jared Towers never did that.
Yeah.
And theoretically he could add to it. If they would go and win a championship, it would be the most iconic contract I've ever seen in my life.
You would be more of a JD Drew than Sammy Watkins.
Yes. All right, guys. Hey, first of all, we want to wish everybody a happy Thanksgiving out there that's watching and listening. We appreciate it. We've had a lot of great feedback on the podcast. We're just getting things started here, still growing. A lot of things still to come to add to it as things go on. But we want to wish everybody a happy Thanksgiving, and thanks for being a part of our Red, Gold, and Bold here on the live stream on Tuesday. And whenever you listen to us, if you're driving to see family and friends and you're listening to the Red, Gold, and Bold podcast or our sister podcast, the 2 Deep podcast, thank you very much for listening to us. Happy Thanksgiving. So for Jeff Chadiha, Jeff, happy Thanksgiving to you. NFL Network, NFL.com. Check out his great work. Eric Eager, I assume at some point, you'll get back together with your family. Happy Thanksgiving to you and your family. I know they just went ahead to where you're going eventually. But happy Thanksgiving to you. Check out Eric's great work at Pro Football Focus. My name is Soren Petro. You can catch my work at 810WHB.com. Thank you very much for listening to us here on Red, Gold, and Bold.